It's about the PAR approach: preparation, action, and response to results. Everything we do has a beginning, a middle, and an end. So we want to prepare properly, then act as completely skillfully as we can, but then respond to the results in a way that we build on our success and learn from our mistakes. So this is how I teach golfers, this is how I do business coaching, this is how I do life coaching. And I was just talking with Wayne, the world today has changed so much. I actually do more coaching by FaceTime and Skype than I do in person. And it's like being in the same room with the person. We can talk. In fact, I've given golf lessons as far away as Australia and helped players make it onto professional tours, having never met them in person, but when they go out there, their coach holds their phone or their iPad up, and I have them stand behind, and I have them stand face on, and I really get to see it as if I'm right there on the greens with them. So it's a really new world of technology, and I have 3 careers. I'm an author. I've written 6 books. My first book was Zen Golf, and I think that's still the most popular. It's slowly being overtaken by my latest book, which is called The Best Diet Book Ever, The Zen of Losing Weight. And the cool thing about it is there are no recipes or menus, no rules or restrictions. So my slogan for that book is, no rules, just tools. There was recently a study about weight loss, and the challenge is that all these diets, especially drastic ones, people lose weight, but it's really bad for them, and then they put it on, and yo-yo dieting is really, really bad for your heart. So if you're going to lose weight, you need to do it very gradually, and you need to do it by changing your relationship to eating and exercise instead of going on some drastic diet that you're going to go off of and then bounce back and forth. So the tools that I offer for that and for all the performance coaching that I do are mindfulness, because you have to be aware of what choices you're making so that you can make better choices. And the other thing that I use is called the NINJA system for changing habits. NINJA stands for necessary, intention, and non-judgmental awareness. So you really have to be motivated. You have to want to make a change. You know, there's a psychologist joke: how many psychologists does it take to change a light bulb? Only one, but the light bulb has to want to change. Okay? So that's the necessary intention part. You have to want to do it, otherwise you won't have the motivation, you won't have that technical term called stick-to-itiveness. And the other part is non-judgmental awareness. What we find is that if we beat ourselves up over doing something wrong, it actually encourages that behavior rather than diminishes it. So simply noticing non-judgmentally when we have a particular intention moves us toward that intention. Like a flower turning towards the sun, we move towards our intention subconsciously as long as we don't get in the way. But when we get full of negative emotions about what we're doing, it actually imprints that habit more strongly. Emotions imprint our experiences more strongly. And what I tell players on the golf course is, you can't hit it straight if you're bent out of shape. So that's really the key. How many of you are golfers here? We have a selection. So one of the things that when I'm working with golfers is another saying I like that's really helpful to understand is, you think that you'll enjoy the game more if only you play better. It's the other way around. You'd play better if only you would enjoy the game more. So what I teach is to be able to do whatever you're trying to do with less frustration, more consistency, and better results. Sound okay? Yeah. All right, that's great. Now, I want to do a little routine. This is actually from an old comedy team that you've probably all heard of, Abbott and Costello. Okay? This is not who's on first, and it's called You're Not Here. And you can look it up on, you can find it on YouTube, it's pretty funny, but I need a volunteer for this one. Anybody? Anybody? This is like Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Anyone? All right, here you are. Okay, so stand right here. So I got to ask you a couple questions. All right? To prove that you're not here. I can prove that you're not here. You ready? Okay. So first, right now, are you in Chicago?
No.
Are you in New York?
No.
Are you in Miami?
No.
Okay. So if you're not in Chicago and you're not in New York, and you're not in Miami, you must be someplace else, right?
Right.
Well, if you're someplace else, you can't be here. And that's the proof. So thank you very much. All right. So you're not here. Now, the reason I do that is I want it to be memorable, because the key to mindfulness, the key to mindful awareness, to paying attention to what's going on, the real key is to knowing whether you are or not. So being able to ask yourself, am I here or am I someplace else? Well, if you're asking the question, you're always here. But if you reflect on what was going on just a few minutes ago, for those of you who have already gotten bored and your mind has drifted off into something else, when I say that and you go, oh, I better pay attention, you have brought your awareness back to the object of your attention in the present moment, but you can recognize that for a few minutes before that, you weren't here. You were someplace else. So this is how we work with the practice in this particular training. We're going to do a little bit of it together, and I want you to have the experience of it, and I've given you an outline, so that at home you can try this for a few minutes if you want to practice training your mind. Now, to start with, training your mind is a little bit like training a dog or a horse. If you have let's take a dog. If you have a dog and you want to tame it and you want to train it, you can't just let it run around in the yard and hope that it comes when you call. You have to hold it on a very short leash. And the first thing you do is you want to calm it down. You want to make sure that the space that it's in, that nothing's going to get it all worked up. Because then it's going to, if you decide to train your dog at a park that's full of squirrels, you're not going to get a lot done. Squirrel, 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 squirrel. The dog's going to be all over the place. In the same way, if we're in a place when we start to train our minds that's very distracted, our attention's going to be taken all over the place. And I really feel like this is one of the problems with kids growing up nowadays, that the screens that they have, the phone and the iPad and the computer and the TV, there are so many screens, they're going from one to another to another to another, and when they're on a screen, they're going from one site to another site to another page. And if you watch TV shows, and especially music videos, they don't hold somebody's attention on one thing for more than a quarter of a second before the scene changes. And the scene changes, and the scene changes. And I think that's one of the causes of what people are calling attention deficit disorder, ADD. But I think it's not attention deficit, it's attention overload disorder, that there are so many things to pay attention to, they think they're going to miss something. So they're jumping around from this to that, to this to that, the other. So if we want to train our minds, we want to do it to start with in a calm, peaceful setting, and we want to move our energy in a way that settles us down. Now, stress makes our energy move up in our body and faster. So when if somebody's walking along and they see something scary, they don't go, yeah, no worries. They go, the shoulders go up, and all the attention goes here, because all of our senses are up in our head. The attention grabbing senses, our eyes, our ears, our nose, our mouth, that's all right up here. So we feel like our minds are up here, and they get going really fast when we're under stress. So to start with, we want to calm down and bring ourselves down. Okay, so let's do that together. What I'd like you to do is sit up, kind of as if you were paying attention. That's good. And I know it's after lunch, so wake up if you need to be woken up. All right. And sit up. And what I want you to do is, don't raise your shoulders, but just fill your torso with a nice full breath and let it all the way out. And just leave it out for a second at the end. One more time. Breathe in, all the way out slowly. Leave it out. Let it come in naturally. One more time. A nice slow breath in. Slowly all the way out. And let it come in. Did you notice how quiet it was? Do you notice how quiet it is now? So when you let the breath go all the way out, were you all chatty up in your mind, or did you really feel yourself sitting on the cushion, on the seat? Settled, right? Nice and settled. And not so chatty. So a quiet mind and a settled body are really good for what you want to do. If you have a phone call that's coming in that's an important call, when the phone rings, don't just reach and grab for it. Take a couple of breaths. Just go, even just one, breathe it out and settle down. And what I tell my players, the golfers, before each shot, what I want them to do is take a nice full breath in and then breathe it down and feel themselves sink down to the ground. So when you breathe out like that, slowly and just letting all the air out, it's as if, the same thing as if you're in a swimming pool and you decide to let yourself sink down to the bottom for a couple of seconds. You let all the way air out and you sink down. And it's quiet down there. And the kids and everybody may be playing and making noise up top, but you're quiet down there. So we're actually letting our minds move down in our body. And I want to do that with one more breath. Take a breath in, and as you breathe out, let your awareness move down. Breathe out past your throat, past your chest, right down into your core. And just feel yourself, feel your torso expand and contract as you breathe out from that place in your core. Feel your weights. Just let the chair support you. Let your weight sink into the chair. Nice and calming, right? Okay, now, those of you who got real calm, you can wake up for this next part. Okay. And so what we want to do for the next part, to train ourselves to pay attention, we want to have our minds on a short leash. So we wanted to pay attention to something we're feeling. That's as close to ourselves as we can get, right? Something we're feeling. So in the outline that I handed out to everyone, that first thing that I just did with the breathing is called the grounding practice. You calm yourself down, you settle yourself down, and you really sit on that cushion. The second part is holding your mind close and noticing whether you're paying attention or your mind is off in a daydream. And there isn't a judgment feature to this. Remember, necessary intention, but non-judgmental awareness. So you're going to sit and you're going to notice, am I breathing? Am I thinking? Am I feeling my posture? Those are the three things that are going on. So let's just take a few breaths, just sit up, and let your gaze be slightly downward. Like look down into your lap, or down onto the table in front of you. And feel the air fill your lungs and fill your torso as you breathe in. Feel what it's like to empty. Fill and empty. Filling with air, empty. And you do this for a little while, and you notice, oh, that's very calming, very peaceful, but now, what should I be thinking about? And your mind starts getting active. And if you start going off into thoughts and you lose track of your posture and your breathing, when you realize it, make the little mental note. As we did before, you're not here, you're someplace else. Back to here and now. And what you come back to is what you were paying attention to. So you come back to that sensation of feeling the breath go in and out. And as long as we're feeling that breath go in and out, we're okay. It's like what we say in golf, as long as you're looking down at the fairway, not up at the fairway, you're okay. All right? So, you tune into your breathing. And what you'll find is when you relax into this and don't worry so much about doing it right, and your mind drifts and comes back. It drifts and comes back. Your mind will always come back eventually, otherwise you would go into one daydream and never come back. So you can trust that. You can relax with it. Know that you'll come back. And when you do, the important part is to remember what you were paying attention to. Back to the breathing. Or back to that thing I was writing. And so this is a practice called recollection. And that is, you recollect your mind when it's gone off someplace and refocus it on what you intended to pay attention to. This is going to happen for people on the golf course. If they start worrying about the ball going into a hazard, you don't want to step up and get ready to swing and say, whatever I do, don't hit it in the water. That's really not your best swing thought. Okay? So you have to recollect. You can recollect yourself and say, no, wait. I want to pay attention to my target in the fairway. And you refocus your mind and pay attention to that target in the fairway. In fact, I'll tell you an interesting story. I was out in Palm Desert playing the Dyna course where they have the LPGA championship there. And just as I was about to tee off, coming from the other I was hitting out in that direction. Coming from the other direction, about 50 yards away was a guy with a leaf blower. And they're pretty loud, and it was occupying my attention. And I could feel that my mind was going that way, even though I wanted to hit the ball this way. And I felt kind of like the Scarecrow in The Wizard of Oz. You could go that way, or you could go this way. And I knew that if my mind was going that way and my body was trying to go this way, it wasn't going to go well. So I looked out there, and there were palm trees right behind the green. And so I pretended the palm trees were shouting, over here, over here. And we can actually convince ourselves that that's the sound we're listening to. And my mind went over there, and I hit the ball nicely down the fairway. In the same way, if you're picturing something and you have a positive image of what you want to accomplish, you're more likely to accomplish that. Now, one of the things, and that's very apropos. Someone spilled a glass of water, hit it with his hand. Okay, we don't just do this sitting still. We want to be able to carry it into mindfulness in action. And that is paying attention to what we're doing as we're doing it. So it's very common. If you were looking at me and trying to pay attention to what I was talking about, and you reached for your glass of water at the same time, it would be more likely that you would knock it over. So you have choices to make all the time. And you can say, you know what? I want to have a drink of water. I'm going to take a time out from listening and pay attention to the glass. And then have your drink and then return. This goes into multitasking. Multitasking is not possible. This is studies from people who have done this practice over the last 2,000 years of paying attention to how the mind works. And the mind can only grasp one thing at a time. You move back and forth very, very quickly. You're looking at me and listening to me, and you think you're doing both at the same time. But actually, whatever you're focusing on as the primary perception, let's say you're looking at my hand gesture, hearing went to the background. Then afterwards, if I'm just standing still and you're listening to me, hearing goes to the foreground, vision goes to the background, and you're not as interested. Think about it. If you want to really listen to a piece of music, what do? You close your eyes. Same thing if you're tasting an amazing piece of bite of food. You close your eyes and you relax back. Because now you can focus on the taste. Now this is something that I bring out in the diet book to get us to be able to eat less and enjoy the food more. And that is setting down your utensils between bites. Because what happens is you start getting into the shoveling momentum, okay? But if you put a bite of food in your mouth, what's the primary sensation? Taste, right? That's the primary perception. But if you start cutting while you have that in your mouth, your mind goes to the cutting, and you don't taste the food. And you're also all tight from holding onto that knife and fork. But if you set them down, your whole body relaxes, you can sit back and chew that bite of food. You get more flavor from that than 10 bites of food that you're not paying attention to. And then you feel satisfied sooner, and you don't need as much. So it's a fabulous technique for actually getting more satisfaction, not stuffing yourself, and being able to enjoy your food more and lose weight. So this is where mindfulness comes in. Are we paying attention to what we choose to pay attention to? Once you've trained your mind to do that close, hold your physical sensations, then you start to move into your perceptions and your environmental awareness. Am I paying attention to something in the present, or has my mind drifted to someplace else? And whenever you realize you've drifted into a daydream, don't judge yourself, just make a mental note. That was someplace else. Now, what do I want to pay attention to in the here and now? And you will have a much, much richer life, I assure you. So, I hope that's helpful. There's so much more I could share with you about the PAR approach, about preparation and action and response to results. But you can read about that. I have that in Zen Golf. You can read more of the things that I suggested in the diet book. If you have a question, you're welcome to contact me. All my contact information is on all of those sheets that are out there. And really, I have 3 careers, which is kind of fun. You can only do one at a time, but as I just talked about. But I'm an author, so I encourage you to check out some of the books. They're print and digital and audio. I recorded all my own audiobooks. I'm a keynote speaker like this, so if you know an association or a group or company that's interested in having a speaker, I like to be both entertaining, humorous, and transmit something of value. Please keep me in mind. Don't keep me a secret. And then I do executive and life coaching. So both for business, for sports performance, for relationships, communication, and for weight management. So any of those, please let anybody who brings it up, please don't keep me a secret and let them know about me. So thank you so much. And I think we have a little time for questions, right? Just a few minutes. Any of those topics? Yes. I can't answer your question, you know why? You're not here. You're someplace else. Okay.
I'm coming back.
Oh, good.
I've been quite interested in hypnosis over the years. Some of your concepts are very similar.
Yes, that's right.
I wonder, is hypnosis and Zen related? I don't know anything about Zen. Are they related? Certainly, your other statements ring true.
Thank you.
The basics of hypnosis.
So the question was, how do hypnosis and Zen and mindfulness relate to each other? I'm not an expert at hypnosis. I've been told that my voice can be very hypnotic. So I apologize if I put some of you to sleep. The others of you, your friends can fill you in on what happened. But a lot of people that I've worked with have said I felt like in a certain way I was hypnotized. So if you know, when we think of hypnosis, we think of 19th century mesmerism and stage shows where somebody acts and makes sounds like a chicken until they snap their fingers. Snap their fingers and they snap out of it. But in fact, it's about being able to access your inner experiences in a way that's not disturbed or distracted by outside stimuli or disturbing thoughts of your own. So it's really getting you to drop down under that pool and be able to pay attention and where it's quiet. That's my understanding of it. Now, Zen is a word it's a Japanese word that is the Japanese pronunciation of a Chinese word, Chan, which is a pronunciation of a Sanskrit word, dhyana, which means total absorption in awareness of the present moment. So it's 24/7 mindfulness, essentially, is what Zen is. And nothing more mystical than that as being present. So one of the stories that I have in there is one student says, "Oh, my master is really amazing. My Zen master is really amazing. He can shoot an arrow and shoot the second arrow right into the back of the first one. And when an apple falls from a tree, he can cut it into quarters before it lands." And the other one said, "Well, that's pretty good, but my teacher's really amazing." He says, "What does your teacher do?" He says, "When my teacher eats, he just eats. When he walks, he just walks." So to be able to truly be present with what you're doing, while you're doing it, one thing at a time, is really amazing. And we get glimpses of it. So wouldn't we like to expand those glimpses? Yes.
I've heard it many times that many golfers will take literally hundreds of practice shots on their off days and so forth. What is your feeling about quality of practice versus quantity of practice?
I'm a big fan of quality of practice. And when you talk about the best golfers, they spend about 2/3 to 3/4 of their time around or on the greens. And what I like to do for that is to spend the time creatively at enhancing your repertoire and playing lots of different kinds of shots. But once you've warmed up, if you're working on a particular move or a particular part of your technique, then you should work on that technique, and there are ways that connect with learning theory to do that best. Overdoing reps is not a good thing to do. So I like to have people do maybe 21 movements without a club or a ball, then 21 movements with a club, and then no more than 21 shots with the ball. After that, it degrades and goes downhill. But if you're not working on something, then all you do is warm up, and then you should practice performance practice. Not that, what I just talked about was skills practice. But you don't hit 21 7-irons in a row. In performance practice, I have people play imaginary holes on the range. You tee up a ball, pretend to make demarcations of the fairway, and hit a tee shot, and then you put it away. You don't get to hit another one. I mean, you don't want to hit another one. That means you hit your first one out of bounds. So you put it away, you take an iron out, then you take a wedge out, then you take a 3-wood out, then you take another driver for the next hole, that, and so on. So don't overdo the reps, whatever you're practicing. Yes?
Years ago, I read a book called Inner Golf. I think that was the name of it.
It was probably The Inner Game of Golf
Yes.
by Tim Galway, who wrote The Inner Game of Tennis.
Okay.
And I just spent a little time with Tim. He's a great guy.
As I recall, the aegis was, the central theme was, a golfer can think about too much when he ought to let his body hit the ball.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Now, Tim took this from tennis, and that is, when you're performing something, too much thinking about it makes you self-conscious and mechanical in your actions. Whereas if we do something naturally, it flows very, very naturally. So I have a question for you. How many of you think you could do something 10,000 times in a row without missing? Hit a target 10,000 times in a row without missing? Probably couldn't. Okay. All of you have done it at some point in your lives, if you exclude periods of inebriation, and that is when did you miss your mouth with a fork full of food? Okay? At some point, as we get older, it's possible, but at some point in our lives, we did that. Okay? And I talked about this to one of my golf schools, and then we had lunch. And one of the guys, we heard him go, ow! I said, what happened? He said, I was just thinking about how I move my hand and my fork, and I stuck myself in the lip. So that's self-consciousness. That's thinking about what you're doing while you're doing it, not really being immersed in the present moment. You are separate from what you're doing. You're over here watching yourself and judging yourself on how you're doing as you're doing it. And how does it feel when you know you're working on something and you know somebody's looking over your shoulder at what you're doing? You're kind of uptight, right? Okay? So I like to say, looking over your own shoulder gives you a real pain in the neck. So don't look over your own shoulder at yourself. There's a Zen story about this where a very famous calligrapher, painter, was doing a particular movement, a particular, Japanese symbols, and he was doing particular symbols, and a Zen master came by, and he was wanted to show him his work. And he said to the Zen master, what do you think? And the master said, that's a Japanese expression, by the way. Not so good. And he said, oh no, I can do it better. And he was more careful to make beautiful strokes. And the master said, actually, that was worse. Try it. Why don't you try it again? And the harder he tried, the worse it got. And then the Zen master said, I need to take a break and get a breath of fresh air. So he stepped outside, and while he was gone, the painter put another piece of paper up and did it real fast, and the master came back in and said, perfection. See, because he wasn't trying to do it right, he was just expressing his talent. And that's what we want to do. We have to wrap up now, so, okay. And any more questions? One more. Yes, sir.
You had us doing an exercise, a breathing exercise.
Yes.
Here. If you're in a doctor's office, practice that previously, waiting for the doctor to come in.
Yeah.
It would bring your blood pressure down. A lot of
Yes, I use that. I actually use that to reduce my blood pressure. And I have gone into a doctor's office, and maybe I was late for the appointment, or actually what ended up happening, I got on a phone call, and it was a bit of an aggravating phone call. And then the doctor, how long were we waiting in that office, right? You wait in the waiting room, and then they say, oh, he'll see you now. You go to another room, he doesn't see you now. You're sitting in there for 20 minutes, okay? So I checked my email, then I had to make a phone call, and just as I hung up, he didn't come in, the nurse came in, and finally, and took my blood pressure, and it was like 135 over 95, and I went, okay, can you give me a minute? And then do it again. And I did this breathing and lowered my center of gravity down, sank into the chair, did about a minute of that, and it was 120 over 80. That's how long it took. But I practiced this for 45 years. So you got to do a little practice to do this. But yes, it will do it, and I highly recommend it before you go in. Because what you don't want is an artifact and have them give you low blood pressure medication when you don't need it. One more.
Is that how you get over a bad shot?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yes, you have to get over the bad shot because, as I said, you can't hit it straight if you're bent out of shape. So the very first thing you do is take a couple of breaths, but then you want to change your mind away from the emotional experience of the result, which was very painful, right? And what I have people do is replace that, erase that swing and replace it with the one they wish they'd made. And when you have to do that, you give your brain a different task. Instead of screaming bloody murder about and beating yourself up about what you just did, you have a task of trying to do it better and making a swing and feeling the difference between the two. And when you do, then you go, ah, and then you leave that spot with a good swing, and you're more calmed down and more likely to get a good shot next. And I want to finish with one last story that has to do with trying harder, like we talked about, thinking about what you're doing while you're doing it. This guy won a raffle. Now we're back to the raffle tickets. He was present when they picked his name, and he won the raffle, and it was a lifelong dream come true. He won a trip to St. Andrews, the old course, the home of golf, to play a round of golf. And he practiced hard, and he hit a lot of balls. And he got lots of lessons, and he started thinking about everything about his swing. And when he got there, he hit a terrible shot on the first tee. So he said, I'm going to try harder. And then he hit a worse shot, and he tried harder. And the harder he tried, the worse he got, and the worse he got, the harder he tried, and got even worse. And by the time he got to the 18th green, he had shot the worst round of his life. And he turned to the caddy and he said, I'm so depressed, I think I'm just going to throw myself in the ocean and drown. And the caddy turned to him and said, well, sir, you can throw yourself in, but you'll never drown. He said, what do you mean? He said, you'll never keep your head down long enough. So thank you very much for your conversation.